and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, I'm Tom Dillon, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Helen Leathers. Hi, Helen, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I'm wonderful, in fact. This week we're looking once more at coaching tools, and Helen is going to tell us a little bit about how she uses future visualizations in her coaching. So, Helen, first of all, tell us, what is visualization within your approach to coaching?
Well, visualization is really a way of helping someone to tap into where they want to go in the future. There might be various different outcomes, but when we coach, we tend to stay on a very cognitive level. We tend to talk about where people want to go and they're thinking about it, which is great. It's great to have that space. What I find is visualization helps them to go a little bit deeper with this, and we can imagine being there, take ourselves into that space, notice what we notice about it, and we might gain new perspectives and new ideas, realizations perhaps that we didn't have before. So it's almost coaching within coaching, but it definitely comes from within the client, where they want to go. I think sometimes it's really easy to be influenced by what other people think, and this definitely helps us to go deeper into what we really feel.
Okay, so we're focused on a future vision of how we want to be, and then we're drawing that future vision into the coaching room, and the coachee is immersing themselves in that future vision?
Yes, so we'll explore what that vision looks like, what else is there, how they are in that place, and we can also look at ideas perhaps of how they've got there, so it can help with steps along the way. It's really interesting because sometimes someone will come to coaching and be looking at their work progression, and oftentimes when we do a visualization, that's what they expect to be imagining. But with the meditative techniques that I use, sometimes they find their vision comes for their personal life, for their family life, and then that helps to inform where they go with their work. So oftentimes the most important things come to the surface.
Okay, sounds fascinating. And you mentioned meditation in there, a meditative approach. So how does that fit with the visualization?
So we're used to the magic wand exercise where we talk someone through, imagine this has happened. What this does with meditation, it takes it just a little bit deeper. So I'll ask someone to get into a relaxed situation, feel relaxed in their body, focus on their breathing. So we really slow down the conscious thinking and we tap into an altered state of consciousness. We tap into those slower brain waves where someone gets more into a state of flow. And they've actually shown that when athletes are in a state of flow, there's lots of alpha brain waves going on in their brain. And using meditation, we can encourage those alpha brain waves. So once we're in flow, we can tap into something at a deeper level.
Okay, so alpha brainwaves. What are alpha brainwaves?
When we are functioning on the everyday, we're doing stuff, we're getting on with things, we have beta brainwaves, and that is just going about our everyday business. We also have lots of gamma brainwaves, and they're our thinking brainwaves, our problem-solving brainwaves. So when we're doing work, we'll have beta and gamma brainwaves as a majority. When we start to relax and when we start to daydream perhaps, when we start to breathe deeply and maybe just chilling on the sofa or starting to get into that relaxed state ready for bed, our brainwaves slow down. And as our brainwaves slow down, they go into alpha brainwaves. Okay. And the more we slow, the more we relax, our brainwaves become more slow and deep as we get into sleep. So it is going into that slower brainwave pattern. When we're in alpha, we also are able to have gamma waves present, so we can still do thinking and rationalisation, and we can still problem solve. So it's a really nice place to come from.
Yeah. And this ties in with some of the research I've done around neuroscience and coaching, with the idea that if we can engage the default mode network of our brain, which is where we do that daydreaming, and if we then start to imagine the future, so doing the visualization, there's all sorts of different parts of the brain that get activated in that way. So it sounds as if the two things tie together, the alpha brainwaves and the different, that default mode network,
Very much
that
so.
element of the brain are coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it allows you to connect with that future vision of yourself, where you want to be at a really deep level. And then that triggers that really intrinsic motivation to get there.
Okay. So it's that idea that once we've envisioned it, the brain has that awareness of that future reality. Possible future reality.
Possible future reality, or one of many future realities. And I have had people do these exercises in a workshop environment who've said, oh my goodness, I never thought I would want to go live by the sea, but that's what's coming up for me. And then they were exploring that in more detail and how that might work for them. So it's really interesting what bubbles to the surface.
Yeah, so it sounds as if it could be really useful with a more existential approach to coaching, of looking at who someone is and who they want to be, rather than that sort of task focus, right, I want to achieve this goal.
Yes, yeah, which is much more in keeping with my style of coaching. And it's about being the best version of you, and the version of you that brings you what you want to achieve in life and where you want to be in life.
Lovely. So now it sounds as though it's a little bit woo for some people, and that not everyone is going to be comfortable with the idea. And I know I found it a bit odd the first time I took part in one of your meditations. I think I invited you along to a workshop where you did it, and I was
checking
because
your
I was
watch.
facilitating the session. I was thinking, oh God, this is going on a bit. She's had 5 minutes now. And I don't know what I was expecting, but it just seemed to, But I obviously I wasn't engaging in the meditation. I was facilitating the workshop, but I guess I was more sceptical of this approach at that time. I've come round to the idea of using a bit of visualization. I'm not quite at the meditative stage yet, but I do use a lot of magic wand stuff. But obviously this is taking it that step further. So what would you, if someone was more practically minded and not really, you felt they perhaps weren't going to get this, what would you do in those circumstances?
It's really interesting that you asked that, because it's really got me thinking, because I've done this meditation with most of my clients, and I've never really stopped to think, oh, are they going to get it or not? I've just tried it. And I always say to people, I'm going to ask you to visualise. It's like imagining. So even people who are perhaps more practical, they can imagine where they want to be. And if they perhaps don't go as deep into it and connect with it in the same way and allow those things to bubble to the surface from their unconscious, they will still benefit from the imagining of this future potential scenario. But yes, I don't think I've ever stopped to think, does this work for this person? I've just kind of gone with it and to see what they've got. And I've done that in workshop situations where people have even said, I didn't think this was for me, but actually I've really benefited from it.
Yeah, interesting. I tried this in a workshop, and I think I had a mix of people that went, wow, that's fantastic, that was just amazing. 2 people went, yeah, didn't really work for me. For me, I'm clearly not as accomplished in meditative visualization as you are, but definitely there was that element for me. Oh, just a little bit maybe of imposter syndrome of thinking, oh, I don't know whether I can make this work. But yeah, so an interesting, and I guess part of my integrative approach is a Gestalt approach, which is all about experimentation. So it's very much the idea of, well, let's just try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But I think that most people will get something from that. And if it doesn't work at all, we'll try something different.
Yeah. How often do you think it hasn't worked in a coaching space?
For me.
For you?
It's never not worked.
That's good. Good to know. So worth persevering. I might continue to work on my meditative visualization.
It does take practice. We'll talk about that later. It does take a bit of practice. So, Maybe you just need more practice, Tom.
That's probably what it is. I'm just not there yet. Okay. So I imagine that some listeners haven't actually ever experienced this idea of meditative visualization. So maybe it's worth having a demo.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
Shall we do that now?
Yes, let's do that now.
Good.
Before I start, it's always good to do some pre-framing and some safety checks beforehand when you're working with a client.
Yeah, well, actually, I particularly on a podcast, because
Yes.
a lot of people might be out walking the dog or driving their car even, listening
Yes.
to us. So just listen up, everyone. It's a health and safety warning from Helen.
Yes, if you are driving, if you are operating heavy machinery, if you're perhaps looking after a small person, or even if you're at work, please do not continue to listen to this part of the podcast. As much as we want you to listen, we want you to be safe. So come back later and listen to this when you're at home, sitting somewhere quiet and comfy, and you won't be disturbed, and you don't need to be quite so alert.
Very good. All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Excellent.
So-
Off you go.
I'm going to imagine that I'm working with a client, and I'm going to pre-frame it in the same way as I would with anyone. And I do this in person and on Zoom, so both work. Firstly, this is going to take about 5 or 6 minutes. So please make sure you're not going to be interrupted by someone in the house or the office or your surroundings, or perhaps by a pet jumping on you while you're nice and relaxed. You will also want to turn your phone and other notifications off. So during this exercise, I'm going to ask you to bring to mind, to visualise and to imagine. Many people experience seeing things in their mind's eye. Some simply have feelings or sensations or a knowingness about things. Your experience is yours. There's no right or wrong. So just let things come and go and notice what you notice. Firstly, find a nice, comfortable place to sit. And if I'm working on Zoom, keep your screen on so that I can see that you're okay throughout. Try to sit upright with uncrossed legs, your feet on the floor, and your weight evenly distributed across both of them. Allow your arms and hands to be relaxed and simply rest them on your lap. Now take a nice deep breath in and out. Breathing in and out, and continuing to breathe slowly and deeply. If you're comfortable to do so, allow your eyes to close. The more you breathe, the more you relax. Be aware of your contact with the chair, the space that you're sitting on. And as you start to feel more relaxed now, you may get a sensation of lightness. And I'd like you to imagine that a part of you from deep within you gets lighter and lighter and starts to float up and out of your body. You feel comfortable and safe for this to happen. And the part of you that would like to look to your future now floats up. And ahead, you can see a future path that you could take. And that part of you that knows your future path begins to float high above and follow it into the future. High above, not to feel what's going on, not to see the detail, just to observe. And you float forward in time, out there sometime in the future, until you get to a point where you feel you want to stop. And you look down now at your point sometime out there in future time, and you can see what you need to see right now. And if you feel comfortable doing so, that part of you can float down to the ground and observe what is happening. Notice what you notice. See what you see. Hear what you hear. And feel what you feel. What is happening in your future time? Who is around you now? How are people interacting with you? And how are you being? How are you showing up in the world, in your future now? And when you've noticed all that there is to notice, seen all there is to see, heard what you need to hear, and felt what you need to feel, this part of you that knows your future now begins to float back up, high above your future, so that it can look down and appreciate how far you've come now. And turning around back to your present, you begin to float all the way back along your path to where you are sat now. And that part of you that knows your future now, or one of your future nows, slowly sinks down back into your body, taking up that space where you're sitting once more. And you notice your body again, and you notice your breathing again. Breathing in, breathing out, becoming aware once more of your contact with the chair and the room around you, any noises and sensations. Slowly bringing your awareness back into your physical body, wriggling your fingers, wriggling your toes, bringing some movement back into your body, bringing your awareness back into the room and the place where you're sitting, and slowly, when you're ready, in your own time, opening your eyes, fully awake, fully aware, and in the present time. And when you're ready, take a few moments to note down anything that you've experienced. You might just want to press pause on this podcast as you make notes of what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, what you knew, and how you showed up in the world in your future.
So there you are. Well done. It's difficult to get back into podcast mode now. I'm all relaxed. Thank you, Helen. That was amazing. So that sounds as though it was perhaps an abridged version. I've heard you do much longer versions of this meditative visualization. So how long would you typically allow someone to be in that space of visualizing?
It really depends. A full visualization can last for 15 minutes, but I quite often do 30 or 40 minutes because we'll sometimes look at how you got there, and that can help you to build in a bit of an action plan that comes from really deep within you. So it depends what we're doing.
Good. So it sounds as if it could take a big chunk of a coaching session, and I know you quite often do hour-long sessions, so that if you're taking 34 minutes for the visualization, what sort of impact does that have for the coachee?
People start off thinking that they'll focus on one thing. They do the visualization and they often come back and tell me, it's really odd. I thought I was going to think about work, but I was thinking about family, or vice versa. And that's absolutely fine, because it's where their unconscious takes them. It's where perhaps I like to think their heart wants to go. And so the outcomes are them getting a better understanding of how they want their lifestyle to be and how they want to show up in the world. It's about them working out a way that they can be the person they want to be. And oftentimes they might have an idea of who and how they want to be, but they don't know how to get there. So that can really help them to engage with that process. If they feel really distant from that version of themselves, it can bring it closer and more like, oh, I don't need to make the huge step, I can make a small one. It makes it real and realistic. So it helps them to engage with the things that they can take action on, that bring them that feeling. So they might not have the house in the country with a small holding that they want, but they might say, well, something else gives them a bit of that feeling. You know, having a greenhouse gives them a bit of that feeling. They could, you know, perhaps I could explore doing that. So it helps them to get closer to it. So it gives them new perspective. It might help them to feel what's in an alignment with that version of themselves that they want to be and to embody. Visualising that future goal, if you like, that vision, really helps them to connect with it powerfully and emotionally and give them that real intrinsic motivation. And as I say, we'll often see steps along the way that they could take, which is when we do that longer visualisation. And I just feel that there's all sorts of outcomes that you can get from this. They can certainly start to feel more about what's in alignment with that future version of themselves and what isn't, so they can start to make those changes. You might notice that I don't put a time frame on this. It's just part of a future potential. So it might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but it's not my place to say that. That's up to the client, and they can work on that framework in a conscious way later when, you know, we come back for another coaching session. But that's not for me to put that on there. So I do make sure that I try to avoid that.
Good. And thinking about when they come out of this meditative visualization, how aware are they of what's gone on for them in that space?
Often very aware, because we don't go really deep into that meditation, but some people may not remember everything, but they remember feeling. So we might talk about that feeling and how they could conjure that feeling again. But for most people, because it's quite a light meditation, they do recall things or they bring things to mind. So yes, they usually have something from it.
Excellent stuff. So what would be your top tips for coaches who want to try this process with their clients?
Firstly, I'd write a script. Now, it might be odd for people to write things down word for word, but that's the best place to start. It should include a wind down in the beginning. So you might have noticed as I started to pre-frame, my voice got slower and that continued until it was nice and calm and slow. Towards the end, you need to have a build back to full wakefulness. So if you listen back again to that visualization, you'll hear that my voice got slightly louder and faster until we're back in the room.
Yeah.
Kind of scenario. Once you've got a script, practice saying it out loud. For lots of reasons, sometimes the script won't work. You need to also practice on someone else so that you can get the timing right, so that you can practice your tonality and your voice, because it's your voice that will help people go into that nice place. Okay. And then thirdly, perhaps record it and listen to yourself. Much like coaching, we can learn a lot when we listen back to ourselves. If you get to the point that you can meditate to your own voice, other people will be able to as well.
Brilliant stuff. I noticed when you were doing the actual meditation, not the kind of wind down and then wind back up again, but there's a different rhythm to your speech. So it's more sing-songy and
yes.
There's more pauses, and so it's a different way of speaking, isn't it?
It's a very different way of speaking. It's and different language as well. So we tap into all the senses, notice what you notice, feel what you feel, hear what you hear. It's really important to do that because we don't want to assume. Imagine you are seeing this. Well, someone might not be seeing that. They might be hearing something or feeling something. So we have to allow for all of those. And yes, that sing-song way of talking helps people to get into a nice relaxed state. Okay. Think about how you would read to a child before bed.
Don't want to go there. I do voices and everything.
That's true. Yeah, don't think about the gruffalo.
No.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Helen. That's been really fascinating and great to see how you might show up differently in a coaching room and just try something out. So next time we are exploring a topic that often comes up in the coaching room, and that will be people pleasing.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be lots of people fascinated by that.
Absolutely. So that's for next time, and we'll say bye for now.
Bye for now.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.